All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Talk Openly. It's wonderful to be here again. I'm Jack, and this is my lovely friend, Daniel. Hello, Daniel.
Hi, Jack. Hi, everybody out there in Talk Openly land.
And, tonight we're going to be talking a little bit about karma, but karma is incredibly complicated. So we're really just going to be talking about it from a perspective of meditating on karma and what we've learned, which I think is going to be really interesting and is something that has, I think, really changed my behavior. I hope so. So I'm looking forward to this.
Same. I can't wait to jump into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we do, I would love to hear a little bit about each other's weeks and our training. So what's been going on for you?
Well, it's been kind of wild and crazy. It's like summer, I don't know, like summertime madness, right? Like it just
Yeah.
continues. I think I mentioned this before, but it just seems like everything's moving. Can't, like when I lay down at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm pooped. Just
Yeah.
like, wow, okay, I can't believe everything moves so fast, right? The day's full. There's all kinds of stuff with work and family and whatever other responsibilities there are. And man, I'm just like, wow, like I just want like winter to come and everything to just chill out. The kids go back to school, everybody kind of just everything calms down, I think. I'm hoping for that anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my practice remains steady, nice and consistent. Yeah, I noticed actually, I've been thinking that maybe sometimes like the dreaminess of my meditations, I think might be sort of a response to chaos in a way. Like it's like, it's a distraction. And so it's like, yeah, anyway, it's been rather interesting. I'm able to sort of pull myself back gently. And so like it's a practice. Like it is actually quite a bit of effort. Like it's not coming easily.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, with all that activity, it's like everything's kind of externalized. So the mind is just outward and
Yeah.
like engaging
Yeah.
with all of that. And it is really hard to just settle down in meditation when everything is so hustle and bustle. Um, in addition to like just the kind of environmental aspects of summer that are like a little bit irritating or agitating, like just how much light there is and it feels like you can't escape. And of course, the heat, especially where you are. And gosh, so many areas around the country right now are just insanely hot. Like it's hard to hold a meditation session in this
Yeah,
condition.
yeah. And I've noted, I don't know if it's just my mind or what, but I noticed that it like agitation for myself, but I also think that I'm noticing it in people around me. Like, I don't know if it's just the heat or if it's just my mind making things up and projecting onto people, but it seems like, like people are a little bit more aggressive, like in their driving and a little bit more, like aggressive too with their language and stuff.
Mm.
It's maybe that's just me though. I don't know. But I do find that it is, I gotta say, like my meditation practice oh gosh, is so helpful. So helpful. I can see, I can feel that slowdown. I can feel like a little taste of winter, like everything kind of chills out for a little bit. Like even if it is even if I'm super distracted in the beginning, especially, there are these moments of incredible serenity and clarity that I really value. I'm not chasing them or anything, but it's nice to see it in meditation. And then I notice afterward how, like how much better I think that my days are and how much more like greater capacity I have for all this stuff.
Big time. Yeah.
I think like, man, if I didn't have my meditation practice, I think I'd lose my mind.
I know I would be losing my mind right now. Absolutely. Not just about personal stuff, but yeah, about the world and
Exactly. Yeah,
everything we're
totally.
dealing with. And yeah, it would just feel and it still does, like everything feels like urgent and imminent in a kind of scary way, still,
Yeah.
but it's not overwhelming in the way that than I know I would have been 5 or 6 years ago. So
Yeah.
I'm
Mm.
really grateful for that, because I really do want to help. And yeah, I've got to be in a stable place of mind to actually do that peacefully. So damn it.
Well, are you achieving stable mind peacefully? How's your meditation practice? How's life?
Yeah, life has also been somewhat yeah, chaotic for me. I think partially due to summer, but I took a trip down to LA to see a family member who's struggling, and recently lost their beloved cat too, very unexpectedly. The cat was young, and so I just wanted to go down there and shore her up. And um you know, there was one point where I felt like, oh, is this kind of like, is this a little bit like ridiculous of me? Like, I'm an environmentalist, I think in my mind, and I'm going to take this quick trip on a plane down to LA.
Yeah.
But I think it was really good. I was able to reflect on, what I've learned in the Dharma and share some of that with my loved one. And I think it was genuinely useful. I love being able to like provide that in those moments where things just feel really tough. Being able to provide a little bit of the truth that I've been able to learn, um, and yeah, and also some comfort. So
Yeah, I
it's
bet your
good.
presence alone, just you being very present and calm and collected, mindful, I think that that alone can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, for sure. But funny thing is that you know I'm sharing all of like the good things that I did, right? But of course there was like um the engaging in like the kind of I would say like the junkiness of samsara, where we watched a lot of TV together too.
Oh yeah.
And because the area that I sleep is in the living room, and she stays up kind of late. And but I don't want to say that's excuses. Like I chose to be there. I willingly chose to watch
Yeah.
that much TV. And we watched like a whole season of RuPaul's Drag Race, and it was fabulous and filthy and all the things. But what I've noticed is that like that's really stuck in my mind.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Like now
Yeah.
that I don't watch a lot of TV and I do a lot more meditation than I do entertainment, when I do engage with entertainment, oh my gosh, it stays. Have you
Right.
noticed that?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I was just complaining about this to my daughter. A friend of mine had recommended that that my kids and I watch a series about these middle schoolers during the Irish Troubles, right? And
Oh,
and it's like it's all lighthearted, whatever. But they all have these like strong Irish accents and this sort of lilt to the way that they speak as particular words. And there's just like a certain like rhythm to the show, right?
yeah.
And so my youngest daughter and I started watching, and we like watched quite a lot of it. And like I don't watch a lot of TV to begin with, but in this case, it was sort of like a lot of it all of a sudden. And I
Mhm.
was telling her, I was like, man, I wake up in the morning and I'm thinking in sort of like this Irish, I've got this, my thoughts have this sort of rhythm to it. And like, even the words come out of my mouth sort of like in a similar like cadence or
Yeah.
whatever. And, I notice how it really takes over my mind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Creates this strong impression,
it really does.
right?
It
And
does.
oh my gosh, yeah, it's really wild. And so that was very clear to me why um like monastics, of course, like we're not monastics, but there's like different vows about like taking in like entertainment, even music. And I recognize that that's because it really creates this impression on our minds. And like those things aren't inherently bad, right? But like it was good for me to notice, like, okay, yeah, it's not bad, but what is it doing for my mind and
Yeah.
my concentration? What am I ending up thinking about instead of thinking about like Dharma stuff, like, what I try and do is like, oh, look at all these people on the plane with me, right? They're my family members, basically, sending love to them, right? Instead, I'm thinking about like, oh gosh, what kind of like drag makeup do I want to get? Which is like, it's fun, right? But it's
Yeah.
not dharma.
Right,
But
right.
to also, it's expression. So I was also thinking about expression and ways that I want to express myself. But it was very interesting, and
Yeah.
was very jet lagged for a couple of days. On Monday morning, I slept in and went to work late, and I didn't get up in time to do my morning meditation. And so I did it later in the day. But what I noticed, oh my gosh, I was so anxious all morning, going to work. I was just kind of like, oh, like that feeling of like, things just feel like in the trenches. But this morning, I resisted the urge to stay in bed. I got up, I did my meditation, and it's been a significantly easier day. My anxieties are down. I even had, a kind of conversation with a coworker that was somewhat, like a conflict based on, this work we're trying to do with a client and needing to communicate something with this person. And it felt fine, it's just did it, took care of business, and it didn't create the kind of anxiety that I was feeling yesterday. So those are good things. Meditation really works.
Yeah,
Um,
nice.
yeah,
It's fun to get that that contrast, right? It's good to sort of see like, oh, how it affects. Like, whoa, this day I did it late, and the whole day I spent sort of in an anxious mess, and then I did it in the morning, and I noticed that the rest of the day was better. Imagine if we took our own advice and encouraged ourselves to bookend our day.
yeah. I like the
Imagine.
bookend.
Ah, yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, that's my plan for today. So I had my morning
Okay.
meditation, and my plan is to end the day with the bookend.
Go
Uh,
get them, Tiger.
I know. So that's my week. It's been
Nice.
a little nutty, but good and fruitful.
Nice. Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Well, is it time? Is it time for
For the RLSSP.
yep, I was trying to think of the acronym. Thank you.
The random Lojong slogan page, right?
Woohoo! Rolf.
Yeah. Okay, let me share my screen.
Lojong is such a touchstone.
It
I
really
need to
is.
come back to it. Okay, no shaking of the page
No
today.
shaking the page.
All
No, I'm
right.
just gonna click the button. Oh, hey,
Oh, come
that was
on.
the same as last week. Like, can
That
we hit
turned
it
out
again?
entertainment.
Okay, I'm gonna hit. Is it okay? Can
Okay,
I hit it
that's
again?
okay. That's okay. Yes,
We'll
yes,
pretend like we didn't see that one.
yes.
Ooh, a new one.
40. Okay, we've got a little paragraph here we're going to read, but this is slogan 40. All corrections are made in one way. I haven't heard
Oh, this one's new,
before.
right?
This is new, and certainly a new phrasing for me. So say Chilbu Choki Gyaltsen says some who are under Mara's influence fail to develop confidence in the spiritual practice. They experience the false perceptions of misguided meditation practice with thoughts like, since I began practicing mind training, illnesses have increased, harms from demons have increased, people have become more hostile, and afflictions such as self-grasping have increased as well. Based on such thoughts, or for no particular reason, they lose enthusiasm for mind training and are in danger of turning away. When this happens, you should become aware of it right there and then and think, a misguided meditative practice has arisen in me. With a second thought, you should reflect, there must be many beings like me in the universe whose thoughts have deviated from true Dharma practice. And take all of these deviations upon yourself and offer your body, wealth, and virtues to others. Imagine that because of this, the thoughts of those others turn toward the Dharma, and these others enter the unmistaken path.
Mm.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. What I don't quite get is
Mhm.
I don't quite get the relationship between what you just read, the paragraph there, and the point itself, the slogan, all corrections are made in one way. What do you
Yeah.
think that means? Is it, I think what it is, I see. So the two steps, right? The corrections, they offer the two
Um,
steps. There's recognition, like, oh, hey, I'm off the path, I'm unbalanced, I'm misguided, whatever. So there's like recognition of it. And then the second one is like, oh, right, I'm not the only one. There's a lot of other people who are going through this as well, or other
yeah.
sentient beings who are experiencing this. And then there's this offering up, right, of all of our what do they say, our body, our wealth and virtues, and sort of
Mhm.
imagining that because of this, because we're giving it to them, that that they are able to then turn towards the Dharma. That's the correction that gets made? That's what's being said, isn't it?
I think that makes sense. Yeah, and just that, I see that coming up a lot in, yeah, in a lot of different types of meditation are about taking on, or not different types, but like responses to afflictions are like taking on, um, everybody's who's experiencing that same
Right.
affliction as your
Yeah.
own, so that, then you can imagine, that takes care of all of that karma, and those other beings are able to, be relieved of that. Um, so yeah, I think that that
Yep.
might be what it's referring to.
And
Um,
how relevant it is to our discussion tonight as well about karma,
yeah,
right?
totally. Yeah, and something
Yeah.
I found interesting is that, since I've started doing meditation, particularly shamatha meditation, but I think, any practice that I've been doing, um, what I've noticed is that it seems like there has been an increase in like afflictions or, distraction in my meditation, excitement. But what I think is actually happening, um, is that I'm just turning up the light,
Yeah.
and seeing all the chaos that's in there. So it was interesting to me that they brought this up about how that can start happening, and we can lose enthusiasm, thinking that it's not working, or we're reverting, we're getting worse.
Yeah.
Um, and so I wonder if like part of that, correction is, coming back to reality, like
Yeah.
what's actually happening, and turns out you're not the only one. There's,
Right.
all sentient beings that are going through this difficult, samsaric state that's confusing, um and yeah, and feels like belittling at times. So, to
And
keep up like the enthusiasm.
right. Well, and there's this notion where they mention, they talk about people, who maybe fail to develop confidence in the practice. What they're experiencing is the false perceptions of misguided meditation practice. And that sort of hints to me sort of the notion of like the intention behind it as well, right? So you're expecting a particular outcome. For example, I'm going to become calm and peaceful, people will like me, and I'm not going to get sick anymore, and whatever, so on
Yeah,
and so forth. And so there's this sort of spiritual materialism perhaps that might be guiding the meditation practice in the first place, which sets up this expectation that doesn't necessarily get met,
right.
right? And in some cases it appears to be that it's exactly the opposite that's happening. So in the sense, like and the truth of the matter is that that sort of misguided, if that's the case, that that kind of misguided meditation practice is also common to many sentient beings
Oh yeah. Oh
who try
yeah.
to do this, right? As we've talked about in the past, like it's how a lot of us actually end up on the path, right? Is through
Sure. I'm
through
still
some,
there.
yeah, through some misunderstandings for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's great. That's something I should really reflect on, because, um, yeah, I definitely still notice that tendency, um, to expect out of meditation that I'm going to be calm.
Yeah.
And, if I could just get rid of that belief, like in this lifetime. I think that would be so useful. Like that, and obviously calmness is oftentimes a side effect or like a wonderful result of the meditation. But that's not like, that's not the point. um
Yeah, my
I know
mine
it's
shows
hard.
up that mine is not so much that I expect calm, but I do expect virtue to follow. And so sometimes it surprises me. Like I'll notice actually, like I'll have like a really deep, nice, good, whatever you want to call it, meditation practice or sit and, do some tongue lin and oh, my heart's open and I'm like at peace and everything. No, really. And I'll be like, oh yeah. And I'm like kind of floating on sort of this like, oh, I'm a good person.
That fun.
Like, oh, something like that. I'm like kind of high on that. And then I'll hop in the car to go somewhere and somebody does cuss me off or
Yeah.
whatever. And I'm like, immediately, I'm like all of my virtuous thoughts go away, completely
Oh.
abandoned, and then I get a good chuckle because I'm like, well, right. You had a misguided meditation practice there.
Yeah. Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah, I like this.
Yeah,
I'm glad that we hit the button again.
me too. I gotta keep that in my back pocket.
What's this picture? There's a
Ooh,
picture on the page here.
the Shinra, 11-headed
Yeah,
back-armed bodhisattva of compassion. Yeah, Avalokiteshvara.
yeah.
Um,
Look at that.
that's a
Look at all
really
those
nice image.
arms.
Man, some of these paintings are just so incredible. I've really grown to love them. I think when I first came to the temple, I was a little bit like, oh, it's so much. It's like so much color and like it's like a lot to look at. Kind of, I think I felt it was kind of busy.
Yeah.
Um, which now I'm just like, these are enrapturing. They're so beautiful.
Mm, mm.
Uh,
They're definitely growing on me too.
yeah, sweet.
Lovely.
Well, meditating on karma.
Can I
uh,
tell you why I wanted to talk about this?
Please do.
Well, so it all started with Chat GPT.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
As,
yeah.
as it does.
As it does. So I had gotten into sort of, I haven't actually, it's an ongoing discussion, it's still going, with Chat GPT, where, I'm discussing sort of this, I love the idea of like simulation theory, right? Like I'm not saying anything is a certain way. I'm just,
Oh, wait, break it down just a little bit. Could you give us like the bullet point of what is that theory?
that we're living in essentially a computer simulation, that we're essentially virtual agents.
Yes. Yeah. Matrix.
Um, yeah. So yeah, Matrix, totally, exact. Well, except no body, right?
Yeah,
We're
okay.
more like Sims characters or something like that, like
Yes, I could talk about Sims all day, but keep going.
right. It's like that. Okay, so imagine that that's what's going on. So I like to think of it as a good philosophical lens through which to sort of perceive things. Anyway, so I'm having this discussion with Chat GPT where I'm like, all right, so let's start with the assumption that we are living in a simulation. What I want to do is I want to explore the algorithm behind karma. I want to design essentially or figure out how does the karmic algorithm work,
Whoa.
right? And it resisted. ChatGPT was like, let's not go there. Karma is a complicated subject, and it's, like it's a
They were
religious
saying the
thing.
right thing.
Yeah, it totally tried to do the right thing. It really did. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. Thank you for your concern, but let's keep going, right?
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
man, we've had some great discussions around like how this karmic algorithm might work, right? And and not just how it might work, but what purpose it serves, right? So for maturing the users, right, for their personal growth, for maintaining the stability of the system and the evolution of the system at large, right? And so then so this was just like a philosophical thing where I was like just having some fun talking to Chat GPT about it. Then I started thinking, I was like, wait a second, this might actually have some practical implications for modern game development, right? So,
Mhm.
one of the things that happens within computer games nowadays is, like essentially, you kind of lose, like there's not a, like, let's say that you're playing a game with all your friends online or something, and you engage in sort of like negative behavior. You're using negative speech or
Mhm.
hateful, whatever you want to call it. That doesn't really necessarily have an impact. It may have an impact on your actual karma, but as far as the gameplay goes, it may or may not really play into it. So I was thinking, how cool would it be to create like a karma engine that goes
Uh-huh.
into the various consoles or whatever? So people could be like, you plug in and like now, whether you're playing Tetris or you're playing some other, some game online, multiplayer game online, doesn't really matter. The effective karma is there.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been a really fun discussion with ChatGPT about it. And so
It
that's
sounds
why,
like it.
yeah, that's why it's been on my mind.
Wow. Okay. I mean, that's I love it. I can't imagine people wanting to add the karma machine to their game console, but I think it's a great idea.
Right. Well, exactly that. I guess, probably it would have to be one of those things that people can opt in and out of, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, they might not make the money that they want off of it. But I think it could actually lead to a rather interesting experience and make it more meaningful, right? It could actually lead to the maturation of the users, right? That
Mhm,
would be kind of
mhm.
cool,
It
right?
would.
And also an evolution of the games themselves and a greater sort of interconnectivity between multiple games. So, I don't know. It'd be kind
Okay.
of cool. Although, I can't help but think that maybe it's something akin to like the Chinese credit system, social credit system.
I have no idea.
Oh my
We
goodness
gotta make it
gracious.
happen. I
Yeah,
think
anyway, it's been fun. So that's why I was like, it was sort of on my mind when you and I were thinking about what we wanted to talk about this week.
yeah.
And I know karma is a complex subject. I don't know anything.
Yeah.
I've gotten some good advice from our teacher about it, and that's about all I've got.
Totally. Yeah, same here. And I've been listening to some talks by Tin Children on karma
Mm-hmm.
and really appreciate just the a little bit more explanation about how it works. Because, coming from a Western, Christian background, I very much see like sin, like that's something that is going to be punished, right? That it's kind of like I'm receiving an external punishment, or like if I do something good that I'll receive an external reward. But it's so very, very different in this Buddhist, worldview. Instead of being like the system of punishment and reward, it's simply like the law of gravity. Like it just is the way it is. Like, the actions that we engage in inevitably result, have results. And so it's just such a different way of viewing it that really removes the judgment. Because it's like, well, okay, I did something that has now like it's just a process that has led to where I'm at.
Right.
Um, and I
And
can
it's only one of several processes as well. So it's not the only process at play.
right, yeah, because there's all other causes and conditions
Right.
where things arise. But it just I really I feel a better sense where I think how I've been approaching karma has been a little bit iffy, where I feel like there's some way that there's like a blame game involved,
Yeah.
where people, I know I myself, but I think there can be a misunderstanding that like, oh, that person's in a bad situation, so that means that that's their fault. It's their fault, and um, I don't need to support them or whatever, because it's like, well, they just screwed up, and that's their karma. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can go awry because it is
Oh
complicated.
yeah. Right.
Um, so I like thinking about it as like, no, it's just the law of gravity. It's just how things unfold. Um,
And
So
it's something just like the law of gravity. It's something that you can simply watch unfold in order to figure out how it works, right? You're not gonna, there is no algorithm that you can sort of see, no written
yeah.
instructions like if this, then that, right? Like it doesn't, that kind of thing doesn't exist. I'm working on it, but you know.
You want to become a Buddha.
Yeah, all right,
Then you'll know.
maybe that's what's needed here. I'm working on that too.
Yeah.
Uh, but we can observe it, right? We can see if we're mindful about it, if we pay attention, we can see how karma works.
Yeah. Yeah, even in this life, right?
That's what
Like,
I mean. Yeah.
yeah, there's, because it feels like there's, that it's all like way behind. Like, oh, all these past lifetimes, and now I'm experiencing the result, which that is happening. But I've noticed that even in this particular lifetime, certain habits that I've picked up that have yeah, resulted in harm in this life, and have also created like this pattern of behavior, right? Because that's one of the characteristics of karma, is that like a small action can bring a big result. And so even just doing one little thing can create this whole pattern of behavior that then grows into this like way of engaging with the world. And one of the ways that has happened for me is that, like, as a kid, I would kind of just like casually lie about a lot of things. And eventually it became like bigger and bigger lies. Like, in middle school, I lied about like uh this notebook that I had that had a whole bunch of like mean stuff about other people and like curse words and stuff, and it got confiscated like at school, and like, so I lied about that. I was like, no, I didn't do that, that wasn't me. And that sounds little, right? But that came from, I think, the behaviors that I learned as a kid that I could get away with, like just kind of casual lying. And then that led to even bigger ones that involved more people, like as an adult, very unhappily in a relationship, and I engaged in some infidelity in that relationship and lied about it. And of course, the harm that does, not only to the person in the relationship, but to ourselves. Like, I felt horrible. There was, yeah, all this guilt and shame. And yeah, it just creates this like ongoing like feeling of needing to hide, needing to cover up, right?
Yeah.
And so that was a big one that I've really been breaking with the Dharma, and with my refuge vows, is like, as best as I can, I'm not going to lie. And that includes like white lies, which is really hard. But I just know that like the feeling that I get, even just in the moment, when I lie or when I kind of fib, is like, ooh, I feel like I'm hiding. I'm like starting to push away, right? And it's not a good feeling. I don't want to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
You're witnessing the consequences of the actions. You're reflecting on past actions and what kind of, like when you sow certain seeds and you get certain fruit, you're like, oh, look at the fruit I got. It was rotten. It wasn't what I wanted, right?
Right.
And that sort of mindfulness, that sort of reflection, you know, tied to practices, like your vows, that modify the course of behavior. I think those things, that's the hopeful aspect of this path, is that we really can't, we're not, so it's not a determinism thing, right? Like, it's not like, oh, we did things in the past and it's
Right.
always going to be like that.
Right.
There's something very, very hopeful. Like, we can change it. It doesn't have to be
Right.
like that, right? Like, yeah, yep, we see we did we did certain things and it led to certain consequences, right? Okay, yeah, we can't undo that, right? We can't undo our past karma. Like that's
Right.
not possible. But we can change, you know, which karmic seeds we're nurturing, right? We can change sort of the landscape, if you will, of our mental landscape, and
Yeah.
make it so that, you know, the good seeds that we've also planted are the ones that are coming to fruition.
Right. Yeah, because that's the case. I think in my mind, I tend to focus on like negative karma because that's like, ooh, that's
Ah,
scary. But at the very same time, all of our positive actions are seeds that are being planted as well, like you said. And one thing that is another thing that I found interesting about these main characteristics of karma is that if you don't create the cause, you won't experience the result. So like the seeds that you do plant, like those are the ones that are going to ripen. And just like the idea, if you plant like a mung bean seed, you're not going to get an oak tree. So
right.
it's like, if we want to create the results of happiness that all of us want, then we need to plant those positive seeds. And so I think I agree. It is very hopeful. It's not like I am a bad person. It's that, okay, I did something that I now realize was harmful and I can change. And I can also,
Exactly.
through some practices, neutralize or reduce some of the negative effects of that karma, um, which that's exciting too.
Exactly. And the thing is that you are just like everybody else. It's sort of like I remember I actually grabbed my notebook just to note to see. I remember my first darshan with Lama. It was 3 years ago, almost exactly.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, and I remember what he told me. What my notes said. I'll just read what my notes said. It said, All things, all beings, even the gods, are subject to cause and effect." He said, his instructions to me were learn the causes that bring about compassion and that increase our capacity to serve others. And he says, investigating causes and conditions leads to wisdom and to the reduction of suffering. Right. And I remember thinking like, yeah, that's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
Right. And there are these like profound implications. Like the fact is that we're all like he said, right, everything, all beings, right, it doesn't matter who you're talking about, are subject to the law of karma. And so that should, like on the one hand, that should be sort of like, oh good, I'm not the only one, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm experiencing these things, right, because of my past karmic actions or whatever. But so is everybody else, right? We're all sort of in the same boat. And I think that that's where, like I have this on my wall. You can't see it. I have the poster of the wheel
Oh,
of
nice.
dependent origination. Anyway, it's hard to see,
It's a
but
good.
I don't know, I've not memorized all 12 links of dependent origination. I only really know the first two because I'm still working on that,
Mhm.
right? So the first one, so the wheel of, the 12 links of dependent origination are sort of like how we get into this mess, and undoing those links is how we get out of the mess. Um, and the very, very first one, the first thing that happens is ignorance,
Mm.
right? And that's something that's universal to all of us. So we're all ignorant, and that's how it all starts off, right? Is through ignorance. It's like the root cause. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it's like sort of like what's it, ignorance of? Maybe that's a separate discussion. But then from that ignorance comes karmic formation, right?
Mm.
Like it's literally like the next thing. What is it that ignorance leads to? What is it? It's the root cause of what? Well, it's the root cause of karmic formations that then give way to suffering.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like really important. It's like one of the very first things. And so it's like fundamental. It's
Yeah,
really fundamental to us all, and a big part of how we, get into the trouble that we get in.
for sure.
Thankfully, it's also the way we get out of it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I want to hear a little bit about, your meditations on karma too, what you've kind of been
Mm.
examining in your life or starting to undo a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I tried. I was like, oh, I could think of a gazillion examples, right? But there, a lot of them were sort of lighthearted and whatever. I didn't actually want to do any soul searching, but unfortunately, as so often happens with our discussions, like there's something happening, in the moment that is a good opportunity for these types of reflections. So yeah, recently, I'd say for the last couple months maybe, I've been stressing about time and money, lack of both of them, right? And so it's like both within at work and in my personal life, it's just like there's not enough time to do everything, and there's a lack of money to do things with, right? And the thing is that this is not new at all to me. Like it comes and goes. Like I don't know how often I've gone through this cycle and of having these feelings, which makes me think that, I've probably done a really, really, really good job in this life and past life, sowing the seeds of what do you call it? Sort of, you call that when you just like don't believe you have enough resources,
We're
right?
just like unsatisfied.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that. Exactly. So a scarcity mindset, I think, is
Yeah.
what I've sort of really sort of cultivated over time,
Oh, me too. You're
right? So I never have enough. It's always scary, and it's always it's whatever. It's like that. And so what's really interesting is that because I've had this experience many, many times in the past, I know how it looked in the past. I know how it felt in the past. I know what I was thinking mostly in the past and what I did as a result of it in the past, right? And then I get to compare that to the way things are now, right? And so, as I said, I'm still working on this stuff. So what's neat about it is I'm like, okay, so here I am stressing out about money and time, right? And I'd say mostly about money. So then I'm like, I can see actually that, like, because I am doing my meditation practice, I have greater sort of insight, clarity into what's happening, and I can see clearly, right, that what's going on is this pursuit, this attachment to and aversion to the 8 worldly concerns, right? That's what this really is all about.
always
Right?
is.
It all comes back to this, right? And and all of them. So the money and the time thing is related to all of them, all 8, right? There's nothing like, so, whether we're talking about pleasure or pain, gain, loss, praise, blame, good reputation, bad reputation, every one of those is at stake. So that's why it's really important to me, right? I'm attached to all that stuff, and don't want it to go away, whatever. So I'm really like, so what's the result? The result is that I'm really, really distracted, right? What am I distracted by? Well, planning how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to make more time? How am I going to get more money? How am I going to get rid of debt, whatever? And a lot of anxiety and a ton of worry, right? So that's what's like distracting me from, because of this stuff, right? And then what I see is the impulsive formation of destructive thoughts. It's impulsive, it's habitual, it's this it's what I kind of am prone to do, right?
It's like the racing, like, oh, you gotta start thinking about the future, and
that's right,
that same rivet in the mind that has gotten so deep,
it's so
automatically
deep.
Goes there.
That's right. So get this. I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I'm gonna do it for the sake of the show. So I'm like, okay, I much of this remains in the realm of thought, thankfully. In the past it did not. So there is some progress there, right? But what is it that my thoughts would sort of lead me to do? Well, when I imagine it, I want to fight with my ex, right? Desperate. Oh my gosh, lots of energy into.
Want to start a fight?
Now I'm not doing it, mind you. I'm not actually doing it, but the thoughts are there, right? It's there. The karmic formation is beginning already, right?
And I imagine like there's a whole scene that's being played and it's
Oh,
so vivid. It's like,
oh,
oh, you could do your best shamatha practice just thinking about that,
just
just one
that.
single pointedly on the argument.
I might just do that, right? But it
No,
gets
don't do
worse.
that.
It gets worse. Oh, you think fighting with the ex? No, 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 no. I also begin to think quite creatively about finances. That's how I would have said it in the past. It's actually lying, cheating, deceiving, right? To try
Yeah.
to try to get more unfairly, perhaps, and how to, for example, discharge my debts, maybe unethically, right? Whatever. So like, there's this sort of desire to like get out easy. I don't like
Yep.
this, and if I
Yep.
could just be creative, I can be wily, I can do this, I can do that. I'm smart. I can game the system. I can something, right? So I
Oh,
can see that.
our self-centered mind that's just
Oh,
thriving within us. Like
yeah.
it's so uncomfortable all the time.
Oh, right, right. It's like I'm like there's this all this I, me, mine going on in there, right? And then of course I'm like, okay, so then I'm like thinking harshly about myself. I'm thinking harshly about other people. I'm coveting, I'm what other people have. I'm jealous, right? I've got all kinds of like malicious thoughts, and I can see it all. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
holy crap, look at all that stuff, right? And the beauty of it is that I can also then sort of, because I see it, I can think about it a little bit, and I can recognize, I can recognize karma at play. And that's helpful in many different ways. For one, I'm like, hey, I can see, just like you were saying, I've done these things before. I've followed, my sort of habit patterns, if you will, and that wasn't helpful, right? It wasn't constructive, and so how can I, what can I do here? And there are all kinds of sort of antidotes or whatever you want to call it, mind training practices that I can engage in and that I do engage in. But the one that we actually talked about right at the outset, where I'm like, hey, wow, I know I'm not the only one in this, right? I get it. Actually, a lot of people have sowed the exact same seed and nurtured it, right? It's actually growing all around me,
Right.
right? I'm not alone in this. And then do exactly what is said, which is like, all right, right? Like essentially some Tonglen practice, right? Pushing to taking it in, being like, all right, right. It's, bring that in and then release all the, sort of like give all that I want, essentially, put it out there, right? And I noticed the lessening of all the sort of cyclical thought
Right.
patterns and stuff.
Right. Well, and that's what's so amazing. And I mean, kudos to you. That's extremely exciting to hear because those forces of our like habitual, karmic kind of behaviors are so strong. It's like I can feel it like turning on my
Oh
mind
yeah.
in a way where it's like, oh, go that direction. It's very strong. And so that's so rad that you were like, you're able to reflect on it. And it's just so interesting how in the moment, our self-centered mind is saying, I've got you, man. Like we're gonna take care of this.
Yeah.
We just
Yeah.
gotta get out of this together. And so it's like this really bad friend, right? It's a really bad friend. It's saying that it's taking care of you, but
Yeah.
really what it's leading is to our own self-destruction.
Oh,
So often we're working against our own self-interest because in the moment we can't stand that uncomfortable feeling of not having what we think we need.
that's
um
right.
and so I love, you're talking about this like real quality of like maybe like forbearance is kind of a good word. Like, okay, I'm going to put off this feeling of like need and desire and just kind of sit with my experience and reflect and see like from a wiser mind, what should I do? And so this kind of patient attitude that I think our meditation practice is really helping us develop. And then that allows we've got the shamatha of calming our minds, and then the vipassana of let me bring in the wisdom mind that
That's
can
right.
help me understand what's actually happening, rather than just getting tugged by this very bad friend who is actually an enemy.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Like, so the meditation practice is definitely helpful for developing patience, but just even the concept of karma, just contemplating it
Yeah,
alone, meditating on it, I suppose, is helpful, because even if I just think about it in really simple terms, like, I know for a fact that planting seeds and growing a garden, it takes time, right?
yeah,
And it requires effort, and that the results of any of my positive actions, that it's not guaranteed to happen quickly. It's not actually guaranteed to happen at all necessarily, right? But it's guaranteed if I nurture, if the right causes and conditions are provided for it to mature, and that regardless, it's going to take time, right?
yeah,
And so I can sort of relax a little bit, because on the one hand, I believe I've been working really, been trying really hard to plant the right seeds and to cultivate the right fruits, so to speak. I see that, but I also know it's not, like, it's not going to yield results exactly what I want right when I want it, you
right,
know?
right. But yeah, at the same time, karma is definite, and the karmic seeds don't get destroyed. Like, the results will come. So the effort that we put in, all of the sunlight and the water and the fertilizer of, like a disciplined practice and developing compassion and joy, and community with sangha, all of those things are going to make those seeds sprout, which is, yeah, it's like, okay, it will happen.
Totally, but it might be that it's like, maybe the things that I'm trying to cultivate, some of them might be like, like tomatoes or something that are going to come up this year, and they're going to grow quickly and
Right,
relatively
right,
easily
right.
and produce abundant fruit. But it could also be, that it's like a nut tree or something that's going to produce, 30 years from now, and that
Yeah,
I'm going to have to, water it and keep the disease free and bug free, and make
yeah.
sure it gets light and everything for 20, 30 years, or maybe multiple lifetimes before I get that nut.
And it's so worth it because nuts are really delicious and nutritious. It's really interesting too. I had an experience a couple weeks ago. I think I talked about it on the show, where I had taken the 8 Mahayana precepts for the day, and so I was fasting, and I ended up losing my credit card and my driver's license on the bus.
Yeah.
And it was like all these like causes and conditions that came together for that to happen. Like I never take the bus. I was just taking it because I was fasting and didn't want to walk. I didn't have my wallet because my wallet broke, so my cards were in my pocket. All these little things that just came together. And what I did in the moment, first I started to feel like the patterned behavior arise of like panic, and shit on yourself, be a jerk to
Right.
yourself, call yourself an
Yeah.
idiot, right? But I saw that it was like this wave that was starting to come up. And what I did is I like sidestepped, and I reminded myself, like, okay, for one, this day is devoted to Dharma, so I'm going to do this, right? But the meditation that I did was reflecting on how this was just a result of my karmic actions. And it wasn't that, what I really want to like get across here is that it wasn't in a way of like beating myself up. It wasn't in a way of like, I screwed up in the past, so now I'm, getting the consequences and being punished. It was just like, oh, okay. Well, if that's the result, then I can deal with that. Like, I can
Right.
just kind of experience it and say, okay, now that karmic seed has ripened. I don't have to worry about that action anymore. It's kind of like it's being taken care of in this moment. I'm just going to experience it. And whatever results come are also results of my actions. And it just is what it is. So why
Right.
why beat myself up? And funny thing is, someone turned in my ID and credit card last week. So if I had panicked and, freaked out, gotten mad, started, calling the lost and found 24/7, I would have felt like an idiot, and it would have just been added stress and anxiety that literally would have no purpose. And so it was just this really, I think, a nice little reminder of like how we can add on so much BS when bad things happen,
Totally.
just by our suffering minds. And so if we can experience the things that happen in our lives as like, okay, yeah, this is a result. I don't need to add more suffering on top of that result.
That's right.
I feel like that's really important, because
That's right.
if we don't, if we react, we're creating more karma, more kind of like negativity that
Right.
will continue on. So
Yeah, I
interesting.
couldn't agree more. That would be an unskillful way of applying karma, right? To think of it in these like super judgmental negative terms,
Yeah.
because ultimately, what we discover is when we approach any of these situations, right? Any of the sort of fruits of our past karmic action, with sort of this like you just said, like this sort of like this friendliness, this openness, this sort of inquisitiveness. It's like friendly, right?
Yeah.
Then it's easier to see as like, oh, yeah, that wasn't skillful. Like, right. I see how it, or, I can just see how it was, maybe not even judging it necessarily, just like, yeah, I see how it is. And then it leads to sort of this like, well, all right, I'll let that inform my, my next action and the one after that as well. Right. So
Right. Right. Yeah.
progress, growth, evolution, stability of the system, right? The user gets to grow. Our simulation is working out just fine.
Daniel. I love that you circled back.
All a cycle.
Yes. Well, this has been really yeah, really kind of joyful and interesting for me. Yeah, thank you for engaging in this and for
Yeah,
bringing
thank
it up.
you. I really appreciate it. I'll credit you in the algorithmic engine.
Why, thank you. Yes. Well, does that mean I'll get some royalties?
Hey, now all that money is mine. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, Jack. I'll share
You're
the wealth.
cultivating generosity.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. If it ever comes about, you can bet your butt you will benefit from it.
Why, thank you. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening. It's always a pleasure being here. And we look forward to another beautiful week. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you, Jack. Thank you, everybody.
All right, take care.
Bye.